is a real horror story, one that apparently took place in Uttar Pradesh about 20 years ago. Now, before we get into this story about five college friends whose road trip turned into an absolute nightmare, you need to understand the title Chalawa. So, what is a Chalawa? Well, in North Indian folklore, it's a supernatural entity, a real trickster, known for creating these powerful illusions. It can mimic voices, it can change its form, and it can warp reality itself, just to lure its victims into a deadly trap. And that's really the terrifying question at the heart of their story. What happens when the road you're on, the people you meet, heck, even time itself, becomes part of some deadly game played by a Chalawa? So let's meet our group. You've got Varun, Karan, Arun, Abhishek, and Kartik. They're all college buddies living in a dorm, and they get a few days off for a holiday. So they hatch a plan. A bike trip to Varun's village, which is only about, 40 or 50 kilometers away. Simple enough, right? They decide to set off in the evening, all excited for a night ride. Just picture it. Five friends on their bikes, you've got the cool mountain air, they're shouting and laughing, just loving that freedom of the open road. It was the absolute perfect start to their holiday. But that feeling of joy was about to be completely shattered. Now, there was something a little different about Varun. He wasn't just any college kid. Ever since he was young, he'd had these really powerful intuitions, these premonitions that something bad was about to happen. He'd even warned his family about accidents before, and weirdly enough, he was always right. And this ability of his was about to be put to the ultimate test. So they're about 10 kilometers into their ride when all of a sudden, Varun just slams on his brakes, bringing the whole group to a screeching halt. His friends pull up right next to him, totally confused, asking what's wrong. But he doesn't say anything. He's just staring, totally frozen, at the dark, empty road ahead of them. At least, it was empty to them. But what Varun saw was absolutely horrific. In his mind's eye, there was a woman standing on the road, and he watched, completely paralyzed, as she murdered every single one of them, including himself. And she wasn't just killing them, she was tearing them apart. And then, one by one, she picked up their bodies and just tossed them into the ravine below like they were nothing more than rag dolls. The second he snaps out of the vision, pure, raw panic just takes over. He starts screaming at his friends, "Take a U-turn, we're all gonna die, just turn around now." His terror was so real, so absolute, that his friends didn't even bother to ask why. They just immediately turned their bikes around. So they hit the gas, speeding back the way they came, desperate to get back to the safety of their dorm. But they hadn't actually escaped the danger. Oh no, they had just ridden deeper into the Chalawa's web of illusion. They've fallen right into a trap. Look, the trip back to their dorm should only take a few minutes, but they drive and they drive for half an hour, and the dorm is nowhere in sight. Instead, they find themselves right back where they started, at that same V-shaped turn where Varun had his vision. They try again and again, for hours, and every single time, they end up in the exact same spot. It was an impossible, terrifying loop. Finally realizing they're trapped, they decide to take a different road from that V-turn. And after a little while, they see it, a light in the distance. It's a petrol pump. You can just imagine the relief flooding over them. Finally, other people. A sign that maybe, just maybe, they're back in the real world. So they pull in and rush over to the attendants, frantically trying to explain that they're lost and need to get back to their dorm. But the workers just give them these blank stares. They're speaking in a strange dialect, their Hindi is weak, and they've never even heard of the address the friends are giving them. And then comes the reveal that just completely shatters their entire reality. The attendant says, "We've lived in this area for years, but there's no such place in Karnataka." They weren't in Uttar Pradesh anymore. They were in Karnataka, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. A journey that was absolutely, physically impossible on the amount of fuel they had in their bikes. Panicked and totally disoriented, they try to find a lifeline, to call home for help. But this is where the horror really ramps up, shifting from a mind-bending illusion to a direct personal attack. Okay, so they all pull out their phones to call their parents. Varun tries his dad, another friend tries his mom. But something's wrong. Varun's call gets answered by Abhishek, who's standing right next to him. Everyone tries again and again, but every single time, their calls just connect to one of the other friends in their group. After about half an hour of this technological nightmare, one call finally gets through. Abhishek's phone rings and the caller ID shows that it's his mother. A huge wave of relief just washes over all of them. Finally, a connection to the outside world. So, Abhishek explains everything, how they're lost and scared. And at first, his mother's voice sounds normal. But then she tells them to go back to that same dangerous road. When Abhishek questions her, her voice completely changes. It becomes dark, sinister, as she whispers, "Just come once." Completely terrified, Abhishek just drops the phone. It hits the ground and breaks apart. The back cover flies off and the battery skids across the concrete. The call is dead, the phone is dead. His friends are all trying to calm him down, asking what on earth his mother said that scared him so badly. And as he's about to explain, the impossible happens. The phone on the ground, the one with its battery lying several feet away, it starts to ring again. It's ringing with zero power. And the caller ID? It's his mother again. Everyone just freezes. This isn't some weird glitch anymore. This is something supernatural, and it's targeting them directly. And what happens next is just a blur of absolute horror. Abhishek, like he's in a trance, picks up the phone and answers. In this flat, really strange voice, he just says, "I'm coming now." Suddenly, he's filled with this inhuman strength, fighting off his friends who are trying to stop him. He breaks free and starts leaping onto the road in these huge, unnatural bounds, almost like an animal. The second he lands, a massive truck appears out of thin air, hits him, and just keeps going. But when the friends run to the spot, there's nothing. No truck and no sign of Abhishek. They both just vanished. Devastated and completely terrified, the remaining four friends make a desperate decision. They jump on their bikes and just race back the way they came, praying they can break this illusion. And this time, it works. They find the V-turn, they find their dorm. But the horror wasn't over. The stalking shadow had followed them home. As they get close to their dorm, their headlights catch something in the middle of the road. It's Abhishek's severed head. Then, as they park, they look up and see his headless body hanging from their balcony. But the next morning, both are gone. Then, a few days later, Varun is at his family's home when his father sees their friend Arun at the window late at night, just smiling this weird, unsettling smile. When his dad goes to open the door, Arun has vanished into thin air. Varun is completely shaken. He knows something is terribly wrong. Arun was supposed to be at his own home, miles and miles away. So why would his phantom appear at Varun's window? Panicked, he immediately grabs the phone and calls Arun's father. The phone is answered on the very first ring. But it's not a greeting that Varun hears. It's the sound of Arun's father, weeping, just completely and utterly inconsolable. And that's where the story ends. It leaves us with one final, haunting question. What happened to Arun? Was he the next victim of the Chalawa? We may never, ever know.